Now, I find this video, what I've read, very, very interesting. Raise your hand if you remember the name Ed Dames, remote viewing guy and his team, who has some predictions under his belt. Some have the dates. It kind of reminds me of the Webbot, where they expect it by a date, doesn't happen, then it happens spectacularly later on. Nonetheless, he's been calling and seeing for all these years what he deems the kill shot. A super powerful coronal mass ejection or solar flare pops off the sun, slaps Earth silly, and causes some major problems on Earth. It's been seen for years. He has not swayed from this one bit. And I see this from whitehouse.gov. This is the White House website. Blog 2015, October 28th. Enhancing national preparedness to space weather events. This is interesting. Let me read this. Enhancing preparedness for space weather events. Our nation's security, economic vitality, and daily functioning depend on the reliable operations of satellites and aircraft, communications networks, navigation systems, and the electric power grid. As these and other similar technologies and infrastructures become increasingly ubiquitous and interdependent, the United States, and indeed the world, faces greater risks from the threats posed by space weather events. I got a feeling this is going to be one hell of a blog post for the White House. Space weather refers to variations in the space environment between the sun and Earth. And then they have in parentheses, and throughout the solar system. In particular, space weather describes the phenomena, solar flares, solar energetic particles, and coronal mass ejections, or CMEs, that impact systems in orbit and on Earth. In recent years, the Obama administration has played an active role in maintaining and advancing the nation's ability to forecast and mitigate the various impacts of space weather. This work has included taking steps to replace aging satellite assets essential to monitoring and forecasting space weather, proposing space weather standards for both the national and international airspace, developing regulations to ensure the continued operation of the electric grid during an extreme space weather event, proposing a new option for replacing crucial extra high voltage or EHV transformers damaged by space weather, and developing domestic production sources for EHV transformers. Yet gaps remain in our capacity to understand, model, predict, respond to, and recover from space weather events. That's why today, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, or OSTP, sounds like a sexually transmitted disease, is hosting the event Space Weather, Understanding Potential Impacts and Building Resilience, with the goals of bringing together federal and external stakeholders to discuss space weather preparedness and related science and technology efforts, and to raise awareness of the importance of being prepared for space weather events. So now all of a sudden, the White House is telling you and I, as a nation, we should become preppers, when preppers were laughed at. Okay, I'm following. Anyone interested is encouraged to tune in live to the event from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern at whitehouse.gov/live. Follow OSTP's coverage of the event and participate using the hashtag #SpaceWeather. At the event, OSTP Director John Holdren is announcing the release of the National Space Weather Strategy and the National Space Weather Action Plan. These two documents were developed by an interagency group of experts with input from stakeholders outside the federal government to clearly articulate how the federal government will work to enhance national space weather preparedness by coordinating, integrating, and expanding existing policy efforts, engaging a broad range of sectors, and collaborating with international counterparts. The strategy identifies goals and establishes the guiding principles that will guide these efforts in both the near and long term, while the action plan identifies specific activities, outcomes, and timelines that the federal government will pursue accordingly. The action plan broadly aligns with investments proposed in the President's budget for fiscal year 2016 and will be reevaluated and updated within 3 years of the date of publication or as needed. In addition, both federal agencies and non-federal agency entities are announcing new actions to further enhance national space weather preparedness. These actions include the U.S. Air Force, in partnership with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, will make publicly available space environment data to validate and improve space weather forecasting. It mentions some other stuff. Together, these efforts will facilitate the integration of space weather considerations into planning and decision-making at all levels, ensuring that the United States is appropriately prepared for and resilient to future space weather events. Now, call me crazy, but I thought 2012, December 21st, has already come and gone. There was nothing to worry about, no solar flare, no doomsday, no earthquake, giant earthquake, no nothing, everything's fine. Then why am I reading this right now? Why are there still earthquakes of epic proportions happening more frequently than normal? Volcanic activity more frequent and more violent than normal. That was building up to 2012 and has now continued through and past 2012 and is now current in 2015, almost 2016. Nothing has stopped. So naturally, if you have this little cup of lemonade, shall we say, and I do a little shaking, and this is normal, and you notice each year or so it's getting a little worse, a little more violent, a little more violent, a little more violent, you would come to the conclusion that we're like a chart, we're going up in violent activity in that cup. And then all of a sudden one day, either that cup's going to just explode and the stuff's going to spray out everywhere, and you're going to say, oh, well, that was the climax. And then it probably goes, there's nothing left of it or whatever, and the cycle starts over somehow. Maybe it takes thousands of years, of course, and whatever. So the point I'm making is, if the chart's still doing this and hasn't done, this, like, okay, it's peaked, we got a peak a year ago, now activity is slowing down, we can tell, yep, okay, no major event happened, no giant 2012 end of the world thing happened, no giant earthquake, everything's good, it's, we're seeing it back off now. That piece doesn't exist. It's just this still. So that's why they're preparing, because they know the big one's coming. And they know what Ed Dames knows about the kill shot will be coming. My question is exactly when. And I don't know if anybody knows that. But they do. And for me to read this on the Whitehouse website, blog, think about how many people were called nutcases. Yo, prepper, solar panels. Oh, come on. 2012 came and gone, man. What's wrong with you? White House, newsflash, October 28th and 29th, actually, 2015. So maybe the White House is a prepping fool. Don't know, but that's fascinating. Take care.